Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to talk about my top 10 best movies of 2024. Best old movies, I should say, because none of these are new releases, none of them are from 2024. They are movies that are 2023 or before then. And that is what we call quote unquote old movies on this channel, just so that we can set it apart from the top 10 movies of 2024, because then it's like, okay, what would we call it? Like the top 10 other non-new release movies? Like, see, it doesn't make sense. You just call it top 10 old movies. So I have quite a few honorable mentions. I did actually film this video yesterday, and it was a little long. I spent like 30 minutes talking about the honorable mentions, and then I only spent like 5 minutes talking about the top 10. So I'm going to try to do the opposite today. My first honorable mention is Betrayed. This was a movie that I just decided to watch out of the blue, and it's all about this woman who infiltrates this white supremacist group so that she can figure out what these people are up to, and figure out get evidence that they killed this Jewish radio host. And the head of the group is Tom Berenger, and I don't need to say anything more. Like, he is so good, and I watched the movie just because I saw he was in it. And this movie has a great cast. I think that it's a really interesting and entertaining movie. And what's funny about it, though, is that I find it heavily flawed, but it's so enjoyable. And even more, it was enjoyable to talk about on the channel. I had a lot of fun just discussing the movie. I think I did like an hour-long review or something, because it was so interesting to talk about. And the thing is that I watch so many movies for this channel, and there's so many that are just not interesting to talk about at all. You know, like Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. I don't think that was a very good review, you know, like, and Batteries Not Included, even though that's one of my honorable mentions. It's like, nah. But Betrayed was really interesting to talk about, and even if I don't think it's the greatest movie, I would definitely watch it again for years to come, and I really enjoyed talking about it. So I recommend that review if you haven't seen it. Another honorable mention is Beyond the Seventh Door. This is a movie that is so bad that it is a masterpiece. It is like the Wish.com version of Saw. It is like the Temu version of Saw. It's all about this guy who looks like a cross between Richard Ramirez and Tommy Wiseau. He is the ultimate, like, bizarre leading man character. He's Yugoslavian, and that explains a lot. And the whole movie, he is like a big whiner, crybaby, complainer who he actually like whines more than the main female character, which is funny because back in this day, it seemed like it was always the other way around. It would seem like there was always that female character who would constantly cry and be like, no, ah, ah, and that it'd be really annoying. But in this movie, it's the guy, and the whole movie he sounds like, hey, what are we going to do? That's what he sounds like the entire movie, and it is fucking hilarious. And then his love interest, his co-lead, she's like this sexy 1980s woman who looks like a 1980s escort that you'd see in like a magazine. And it's just like the most bizarre, odd couple you've ever seen. Like, these two people, you would never expect to see them in a whole movie together. And there's this decision that the main character makes at the end of the movie that is so weird, and it makes no sense at all. It's the greatest thing. I mean, this is probably the best bad movie I've ever seen. I would love to watch it again, and I would highly recommend it. It's so bad, but it's so hilarious. Next up is Lemonade Mouth. I gotta be honest, for being about a band that I didn't even know about, this movie is really, really good. It's a very uplifting movie, and it's one of those movies that makes you feel good. And I feel like, and it was funny because I listened to this interview yesterday, and this person said the exact same thing that I had said, which is like, there needs to be more movies that make you feel good coming out of them. Not necessarily in terms of like content, like, yeah, you should be able to have like whatever content you want to have. Like if you want to have like something really dark that happens, or like blood, violence, gore, whatever. But we need more movies that make people like feel good and like feel that they had a satisfying experience going to the movies. And I feel like Lemonade Mouth, even though it's a Disney Channel movie, I enjoyed, and I'm gonna be completely honest, I enjoyed Lemonade Mouth more than 90% 90% of the new release movies that I saw last year. It was so good. And it was also pretty funny, too. Next up is I Know My First Name is Steven. This is a really long, I think it's like a 4-hour TV movie, and it's all about this kid. It's a true story. It's all about this kid who gets kidnapped by this guy, and he keeps him for years and molests him and raises him as his quote-unquote son. And it is a really, really disturbing story and a disturbing movie. And it's basically like Lolita, but with a little boy instead of a little girl. And it's insane. The performances in this movie were fantastic. You had Cowboy from Full Metal Jacket playing the bad guy. He did such a good job. And then I know that people are really hesitant about the new Superman movie, about the guy who's playing Clark Kent's father. But he was in this movie, and he played like a reluctant accomplice to the main bad guy, and he did a really good job. So I have full confidence in that guy playing Clark Kent's father. I would say that the only thing I didn't like about this movie is that in real life, the main bad guy, he had a girlfriend, and they showed her in the movie for like 5 minutes, and they kind of implied that she was molesting him too, that they would have like basically like threesomes together or something in like a disgusting, grotesque way. But like in the movie, they just kind of write that off. Like it's just like in real life, where whenever you have like these serial killer couples, the woman is always basically like completely spared the amount of what I don't know how I think I'm saying it incorrectly, but like, you know, for instance, like there's that Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka in Canada, and what happened to Carla, even though she was just as bad as him, if not worse? Well, now she is living off in like some tropical island with a completely new family and a new name, like nothing ever happened, so that she can be protected and just live out her life, even though she does not deserve it at all. And just that's one example, and it seems like every single time you have, like, there's like a double standard. Like it's always like, oh yeah, well he was a lot worse than her because he's a man. You know, and like in this movie, they completely write off that this woman was abusing this child for years with that other guy, and they just kind of treat it like, oh yeah, she did that, so what? It's because it's always like there's I think that there's like a misbalance of justice when it comes to men and women. I think that there's an inequality of justice. We see it all the time nowadays, like with Amber Heard. She should be in prison now for what she did to Johnny Depp, but instead she's off in Europe doing whatever she wants. And there's even people who still defend her. But then when it comes to Johnny Depp, it's like, even though he proved his innocence, it's like, oh, who cares? He's a bad guy. Who cares? And I think that that's a big problem with society in general, is that now women are starting to take advantage of this inequality of justice. Because all they have to do is just blame everything on a man, and then all their problems go away. And we just saw that this past year with Blake Lively. You know, she made up all these false allegations against her director and her co-star, whatever, and you know, now she's gonna get fucked up because he's fighting back. He's not gonna let her smear his name and destroy his reputation. He is going to probably ruin her entire career, and probably ruin Ryan Reynolds' career too. But I guarantee that there will be something where she'll find a way to redeem herself, quote unquote. Like, she'll be like, oh, well, I was pressured by my husband to do it, or something like that, you know, because that's what they always do. That's what they always do. And so I really didn't like that in this movie, because I felt like, you know, they spent 4 hours basically showing how evil this guy was, and they wrote off that this woman molested the little boy. So I thought that was really weird and kind of creepy. Next up is Fatal Vision. This is a TV movie that's all about the Colonel McDonald story. Basically, it was this military doctor guy who his family was brutally attacked and murdered, and he tried to make it look like these people broke in and killed them, when in fact it probably was him who did it. And the whole case is so interesting. I think that the movie isn't the greatest. Like, I don't think that it's a great TV movie. It's a great thriller, but I do think that the mystery is so interesting that it really helps boost the movie, which would otherwise have been just kind of like a mediocre movie. I also thought that the performances were really good, so I would recommend that movie too. Next up is Batteries Not Included. I really liked this movie. I thought that it was a really heartwarming movie, and I liked all the characters. I thought that the characters were all really well defined, and they all were, like, honestly, like, really memorable characters. And if you guys are wondering why my voice is so rough, I'm going to be playing another character in my movie, and last night I was practicing doing the voice, and it's a voice that is kind of, like, hard to do. So, yeah. I guess that's one of the downfalls of playing multiple characters, is that, you know, you can't always have an easy voice. You got to have, like, a hard voice to do so that you can sound like you're actually a different person. But anyways, next up is Camp Nowhere. This is basically like, if you guys have ever seen the movie Accepted with Justin Long, this is like that, but with kids and but with summer camp. It's also got Christopher Lloyd in it, and I think that this movie is a lot of fun. I think it's really funny, and I think it's a really underrated comedy. Next up is Barnum, with Burt Lancaster playing P.T. Barnum. I think that this is a pretty good TV movie. It feels like the highlight reel of P.T. Barnum's life, and I think that the main takeaway that I got from this movie, though, was that, you know, all these people back when The Greatest Showman came out, they acted like P.T. Barnum is the worst human being on the planet. He's terrible. He's evil. And it's like, what did he do that was so bad? And then you find out in the movie he didn't really do anything that bad at all. He was actually like a really inspirational figure. And I even read his book. I read his book on making money. I think it's got like a really funny title, like How to Make Money and Keep It or something like that. And his advice in the book is literally just to save money and to advertise what you have. Like, that's like literally, like, he's so, like, all these people, when that movie came out, they're like, oh my god, this is so disgusting that they're making this movie about this evil person. And then you come to find out that, like, why was he evil? Because he told people to save money and to advertise their products? That's why he's such an evil person? Like, it's bizarre. And so, yeah, I really don't think he was that evil at all. I would say that he was like 65% good and 35% evil. I mean, that's another thing I think that's become a problem with society, is that there can't be any complicated people anymore. There can't be any complicated characters. There can't be people who have flaws. Because if people have flaws, then that means that you might have flaws. And God forbid if you have any character flaws at all nowadays. It's like everybody has to be 100% perfect, like they're all robots, or like they're in a Hallmark movie or something. And I just think that it's disgusting. It's like, we need to go back to the age of like where people recognize that everyone is flawed, and rather than like fight back, we embrace the flaws. Because there's no other way to move forward. You can't just pretend like people are perfect. That's why, especially nowadays with like the celebrities and everything, the way that they pretend that they're so perfect, and you see this idolization of like Ariana Grande and people like her. It's really gross, to be honest. And I think that P.T. Barnum, after watching this movie, he's probably in my top 10 inspirational figures of all time. So, and I don't give a fuck. It's my opinion, and fuck off. Next up is Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael. This movie is kind of a mixed bag because it is kind of a giant, like, it's basically Blue Balls, the movie. Because the movie's called Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael, but Roxy Carmichael never comes home. But the thing that I love about this movie, besides the fact that Winona Ryder is in it, the thing that I love about the movie is that it completely destroys the celebrity. It's all about how bad celebrities really are and how they're not perfect at all. Because you have this character of Roxy Carmichael she's just completely worshipped by the small town, to the point of where they want to dedicate this whole event to her and have her come, and they have a museum that's in her house, which is really queer and stupid, because the way that they treat it in the movie, it's very satirical and very bizarre. But then by the end of the movie, you find out just how flawed and imperfect that this celebrity really is. She's very, very flawed. And she's not this perfect person that people have made her out to be. And so I really love that they did that. I think that it's a very ballsy movie. Next up is The Little Rascal Saved the Day. This is a straight-to-DVD movie, and somehow it was one of the best movies I watched last year. It was very funny. It was very heartwarming. It's basically a series of schemes by the Little Rascals in order to make money so that they can help save this bakery. It's a cliche story, but it's so much fun. I would definitely watch it again. I would highly recommend it. My last honorable mention is The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. This was a really different ghost story, and I really love the performances in this movie. I love the dynamic between the two leading characters. The only thing is I didn't like the ending. And I mean I didn't like the last like 30 minutes. It just something happened in it, and it really really kind of soured me, and it just kind of pissed me off. But the rest of the movie, I loved it. I thought it was really good. So God, I did it again. In fact, I think I might have even spent a longer time talking about the honorable mentions in this video. Whatever. That's how it goes. Number 10 is Cecil B. Demented. This is all about these really, really low-budget, rebellious filmmakers who kidnap this actress and force her to be in their movie. The thing that I loved about this movie was that even though it was really over the top to the point of where it was almost cartoonish, the message of the movie was so poignant and it was so effective that it really, really was inspiring to watch. And the message was to, make the art that you want to make regardless of what other people think, and to stick with it. And I think that it was the perfect movie for me to watch while being in the middle of making my own 2 movies. Yeah, and yes, I am making 2 movies at the same time. But I love the movie. I thought that it was pretty funny. And I love the performance from Melanie Griffith. I've never really been a big fan of her, but I thought that she did a really good job in this movie, even though I've never really seen her in very many things before. And I also thought that this movie felt like it was made by people who love movies. There's a lot of like references in this movie and little tributes to classic filmmakers and such. And so I would highly recommend this movie, especially if you're making your own movie. It's really inspiring, and it will definitely light a fire under your you-know-what. Number 9 is Smile. This is one of the best modern horror movies I've ever seen. I think that it's very creative, it's clever, it's well written. I love that it's a slow burn too. A lot of people don't like it because it has a slow pace, but I love the fact that it was slow, because I think that it was very reminiscent of horror movies from the 70s. It didn't have very many jump scares, and I thought it was legitimately creepy. I thought it was legitimately scary, and I loved it. I would highly recommend this movie as like it's in the same like league, I think, as like classic horror movies. That's how much I liked it. I also really liked the main character. She was smart and clever, and she was not like the typical final girl, because I hate final girls. I despise them. There's nothing more that I hate in horror movies than final girls. They just completely ruin the experience for me, because it just feels like they don't really have to do much of anything to survive, and they're basically like a tourist in their own movie. Like especially Pearl, played by Mia Goth in those new shitty movies, the X and Pearl and Maxine. Like her character is just like the worst horror movie character, or one of the worst horror movie characters, because she's just trash. She's so boring and bland, and she just like basically roller skates through her movies, and it's like it's so boring and lame and predictable and just complete trash. Number 8 is Afterwards. This is about a severely depressed suicidal woman who goes on a vacation to Costa Rica or something like that. I can't remember. I'm sorry. I just can't remember. And she meets this guy, and it's a really good movie because it's probably the most heartwarming movie I saw all year. It was the best feel-good movie, and it was such a good twist at the end. I won't give away what happens, but it was such a good twist that it would turn out the way that it turned out. And I would this is probably one of the best movies I've ever seen. It was such a flawless movie in terms of it had like really good and pure intentions of making you feel good, and it did that the entire movie. And also, I don't think I've ever seen this main actress before, who was Marcia Gay Harden. Yeah, I'm looking at her credits. Oh, she was in Flubber. I've seen Flubber. Yeah, I don't think I've seen anything else though. But yeah, she was really good. She was really, really good. Number 7 is The Little Rascals. So yeah, I loved both Little Rascals movies. This one just felt like the classic kids movie that I should have seen as a kid. I thought that it was so appropriate that the rich kid's father was played by Trump, and I just thought that this was like a classic movie that I was lucky enough to see, because this is a movie that as a kid I had always kind of like looked away from it, like I really didn't want to watch it because I thought it looked stupid. And Safi, for some reason, she's biased against the Little Rascals. She hates them. She hates our gang. But I love our gang. I think that I should be entered as like an honorary member. And I think that this movie, though, it's such a cute and funny movie. It's a perfect kids movie. I would highly recommend it for children as well. And I think that it did a really good job at adapting the TV show, because I did watch a couple of episodes of the old show, and I think that it did a great job of adapting that show while also telling its own story. And I gotta be honest, too, I wish that they would make more Little Rascals movies. And I'm probably the only one on the planet Earth who thinks that. Number 6 is Short Circuit 2. I really wasn't that much of a fan of Short Circuit 1. I thought it was pretty dull and mediocre. I mean, it was just kind of standard. It really didn't do anything for me. But the second one, surprisingly, was like a masterpiece sequel. And they took this side character who, this is a white actor who is pretending to be an Indian guy. And funnily enough, like, I think he plays a better Indian guy than any Indian movie character that I've ever seen. He's such a fully developed character. He's such a well-rounded character. And he did such a good job that, honestly, too, I didn't even know that he was a white guy until the end of the second movie when I looked it up. So that's how good of a job he did at playing this character. So that whole thing with, like, when actors pretend to be other races and things, I really think that we need to forget about that whole controversy, because I think that it really has to do with acting rather than like anything else, because like he did such a good job, and he wasn't making a mockery of being Indian with this character. He was playing a character. He was playing a real person. Well, not a real person, but like a real feeling person. I also loved seeing the Chuck from Better Call Saul, Michael McKean. He was like the side character. And yeah, I would highly recommend this movie. This is one of the best movie sequels that I've ever seen. It's so good and it's so perfect. And I put in my Letterboxd review, the love interest is hot, so that's also another plus. I can't even remember the love interest. Who was the love interest? Oh. Well, I don't know, man. Maybe I was. I don't know. She's a. I don't know. Oh, I'm having trouble remembering. Is the thing. I'm having trouble. I just can't recall her at all. But I guess I found her really hot at the beginning of last year. Number 5 is West Side Story. And I'll just say this. Usually I hate musicals. I think that musicals are the worst thing ever. But I love this movie. I love Romeo and Juliet, so I love seeing like different versions of that. And I loved Natalie Wood in this movie. I think that she's a great actress and kind of underrated. You know, people talk about classic actresses. They talk about Marilyn Monroe, Grace Kelly. Ugh! I hate Grace Kelly, okay? That's my big hot take when it comes to classic movies. I hate Grace Kelly. I don't find her attractive at all. I don't find her talented. I don't like anything about her. I think she's the most overrated actress of all time. Or no, not all time, but like the most overrated classic movie actress. I think that Natalie Wood, she's special. She was a special woman. She was a special actress. And I also had a really interesting dream about her, which I would love to talk about because it was real. I'll talk about that. Okay, I will do that video for tomorrow. I promise you guys. Because it was really weird, and then it turned out that something like it happened, so it really, really is kind of strange. Like I don't even know what was the deal with that. So I can't wait to talk about that because it was really creepy and weird. It was like it felt like I'll talk about it. So number 4 is Hello Mary, and also I will admit at West Side Story I did cry at the end. And I loved all the music. I loved all the songs. I would highly recommend this movie. Number 4 is Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. Prom Night 1 is pretty good. It's kind of underrated. I think that it gets a lot of flack for its slow pace, which is, I think that's a problem with people nowadays, is that they can't handle the slow pace of movies. They can't handle a movie taking its time to tell a story, and they just want everything to be fast-paced like MCU movies, which is funny because there's a lot of really slow, boring MCU movies. And let's not even talk about DC. So, Prom Night 2 is like a mix of Carrie and Nightmare on Elm Street. I think that Mary Lou is probably one of my top favorite horror movie villains of all time. And I love the movie. I thought that they did such a good job. The only disappointing thing is that there was, and I know that I talked about this in the review, so I'll probably give a better explanation in the full review of the movie. But there's this part where she's going to kill this woman by chopping her head off with a paper cutter in this classroom. But then she decides that it needs to look like a suicide, so that she hangs her instead. And I was just really disappointed that she didn't chop her head off with the paper cutter. But other than that, this is one of the best horror movie sequels I've ever seen. It's very underrated. I would highly recommend it. And the third one wasn't that bad either. The third Prom Night was kind of fun too. Number 3 is Edward Scissorhands. Growing up, I was going to watch this movie, but Safi told me it was like dark and depressing or something, which it really wasn't very depressing at all. In fact, I thought it was really funny. I thought that it had a lot of great jokes throughout the movie. I loved the Tim Burton style in this movie and how it felt like it was in the Tim Burton world. I think that Johnny Depp's performance was award-worthy. I loved Winona Ryder, of course. The only thing I didn't like was the ending. I thought that the ending was retarded. The ending is probably one of the worst endings I saw all year last year, and that's saying something. Number 2 is In Cold Blood. This is the best true crime movie I've ever seen. The thing that I love about it is that it's so incredibly detailed. I've never seen a movie as detailed as this movie. It was so detailed that like I wouldn't question anything about it. It was so thorough that you really felt like you were watching something that really happened. And it was so impressive. I think that the thing that is most disturbing and the thing that really like upset me, like I had a stomach ache watching this movie. And I do have anxiety, I do have IBS, but when I watch a movie and I get a stomach ache, that's a sign of a classic movie right there. But surprisingly, this movie's all about these two guys who killed this entire family, and it's so hilarious because they wait until near the end of the movie to tell you what actually happened. They keep it in secret, they keep it a mystery, and they kind of make it seem like it was this cold-blooded killing, this massacre, but then they show it, and it was this really, really weak and pathetic, basically a crime that shouldn't have even happened, because the whole thing was like a complete epic fail, and just everything about it was like a fail. One of the killers, he has like this horrible condition where, kind of like the Luigi shooter, where he's just in complete pain all the time in his body, and he was barely functioning when they were doing this murder. Like it was just completely bizarre. And then it's like it really wasn't how you would have imagined that it would be. It's not like with these other killings that you hear about or that you've seen like in movies for years and years, like a certain one that I've talked about a lot that I actually know a lot about. But like it was just a complete epic fail, and it was a completely pathetic, like, just excuse of a crime, and it was just so like sad. And these two characters were sad people, and you end up feeling more sorry for them getting killed at the end of the movie than you do for the family that they killed. Like, obviously both crimes are equally as horrible, if not, like, maybe, I don't know, they're both equally bad, but it shows that like the death penalty is probably just as bad as the crime that they committed in this movie. Like, I do believe that some criminals should be put to death. I do agree with that, but I don't think that it should be the standard. And I don't think that, like, the way that it was so disturbing watching these two people get put to death. It was really hard to watch, and it was so upsetting that I was really, at the end of the movie, I was very upset. I was very, very upset at these two people getting put to death. Like, they should just be in prison forever. Like, there shouldn't be, like, and I won't say anything else about it, but, like, this was a masterpiece of a movie. It was an all-time great movie. Number 1 is The Fugitive. Even though I was watching this movie on my phone in the car on the way home from a vacation, this is probably one of the best movies I've ever seen. It was like a roller coaster ride from beginning to end. And when you learn about the production of this movie, it really shows that, like, it does not matter how messy and chaotic and all over the place a production can be, because all that matters is the finished product, the art that's on the screen, because it is a miracle. After learning about the production for the movie, it is a miracle that they made this movie. It is a miracle that it was as good as it turned out to be. It's all about this guy who was supposed to be, I think, put to death or put in prison for the rest of his life for killing his wife. And he's a famous doctor, and he's very well known, but he did not do it, and he maintains his innocence that he did not do it, but it was this other guy. And so it's kind of similar to the Colonel McDonald case, except for in this case, he really is innocent and he's not the bad guy. And so the whole movie is about him trying to prove his innocence while also being on the run from Tommy Lee fucking Jones. And that is really the highlight of this movie. Tommy Lee Jones, he plays this martial character. And the thing that I loved about this character was that he wasn't a bad guy. He was like a hero. He was a very good person. But the situation that he was in this movie was that he was kind of forced into being the bad guy because, he was just doing his job. He was just doing what, he would do for anyone else. Like, he had to catch this guy. And so there came a certain point, though, where he had to finally, turn around and help him because he's innocent. And so I love this movie. I think it's one of my top movies of all time. So anyways, please like this video and comment and tell me just how negative I am, because I know that people who've seen my videos, they love to say how I never say anything nice about any movie, and I'm always negative about every movie. So tell me that again in the comments section, because it would be so ironic for you to do that under this video in particular. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon for the Natalie Wood video. Bye.